I'm up from London. I'm doing some measurements. We're by Newfoundland Road, and there's a number of monopoles which have sprung up like mushrooms after the rain. You can see by my meter that we've got a reading of about 1300 millivolts per metre, which in plain English is over twice the meter manufacturer's recommended safe limit for prolonged exposure. Furthermore, these readings are not the worst I've taken today. The readings do fluctuate, but we've had a reading over 2 volts per metre, which is in the region of 4 times the recommended exposure limit. And don't forget, that's for adults. It's twice as bad for children.
Brian, how are you? I'm a representative from the St. Paul's community, and I've been really interested and eager to find out more about the 5G masts. I'm currently leading a lobbying of people from this community, and we're very concerned about that mast there on Newfoundland Road. You just did some reading, and I'm really quite alarmed. It sounds really high. Can you explain to me what kind of implication will that have on the residents, the environment?
Yeah.
Can you explain that to me, please?
Okay, the readings we've taken in volts per metre, which is a measure of electric field. The meter manufacturer recommends that nobody is exposed to more than 614 millivolts per metre. The figures that we've taken are 3 times, 4 times that today. Okay. That's bad for adults because it's 4 times the recommended limit, but it's 8 times as bad for children.
Right, I'm still really concerned now, because that sounds like really hard evidence for me as a community person to, one, keep up the lobbying, because our lobbying outcome is to have that mast taken down, in spite of the council saying to us that they were consulted about this last year, and we felt as a community that was last year. You didn't talk to us. You've spoken to us about the recent one in St. Paul's, and we managed to advocate against that and have that stopped. Now that you've told me about the frequency, is that the right term? The levels, the electric field, and the highness of it, that I'm really more driven to really coordinate this community and get this message up to the council and to the proposers, the people who put this up, which I understand is Telecom, to have this mast removed. What's your, you know, for somebody, me as a layperson like me, a resident, what would you be telling me in terms of that process, that campaigning that we're doing?
Okay, I'm a technical person by background, and I think the readings are worrying. They're doubly worrying because it's the government's policy to roll out more and more 5G masts, even though the 5G masts will not be talking 5G initially in a number of places. They'll still be talking 4G and giving signals like we've just measured. I think you're very right to be concerned for the community for that reason, and of course the reason of people's health. Okay. I've seen in London people who've never previously had any symptoms of electrosensitivity developing bleeding, headaches, blisters, things like that. I just hope it doesn't happen in Bristol.
To be quite honest, Brian, since I'm aware of what this is, I've come here a couple of times, and I find after I do get chest pains, and I've made a point now, because I only live on the next street, and I could come out my street and take from my street you take a left, and then you take a right to come here. I no longer do that anymore. I actually take a left and a left, and I go on the motorway and I go where I'm going. And I personally feel I want to let this community, I'm passionate about the St. Paul's community. I've been here from the 70s, and I am a community activist, but strongly I'm a youth worker. And I really want to get this message over to our people that the 5G, it's got many issues that we're aware of why it shouldn't go up. But one of them that's really standing out still to me is the health impact. And I really want to get this message over to our community. I want the councillors. This is where I'm surprised, because if you've just explained the level that it's at, surely the planners, the council people who are making decisions, so surely they must have that understanding to actually say, no, we don't want the mast put up here, because it's right near the school, it's right near a sports centre, there are businesses that you could see, and they have plans to develop this land here for 300 properties and businesses. I mean, I don't get it.
Okay,
I don't
think
get
the
that.
government has taken leave of its senses. The government is actually telling local authorities not to reject masks on health grounds, and I think that's totally irrational. Now, you mentioned you're a youth worker. Young people, if they're children, they're more susceptible to the radiation because their bodies are less well developed.
Okay.
Even say 18-year-old, 21-year-old young people, they've got more of their life to live, and the amount of radiation exposure builds up. It's cumulative, and that means that they've got longer lifespan of exposure to this sort of radiation, possibly even worse levels. I can only see it resulting in cases of cancer, on top of the other things like headaches that people suffer.
So are you saying the people that are likely to be more vulnerable to this are young people,
I would
elderly
say
people?
Children certainly, because children's bodies are less well formed.
Right.
But if I'm a 61-year-old adult, I might have, say, 15 years of my life to go.
Sure.
But if you're exposed for maybe 20 years to radiation like an 18-year-old is, by the time they're 38, they could well have cancer because the radiation levels are built up cumulatively.
Yeah. So you're definitely saying that a 5G mask like this particular one here will eventually be kicking out a high level of radiation that should be concerning to people nearby. Is that what you're kind of saying?
The 5G masks are more powerful than the 4G masks from what I've heard, and they're also trying to get a lot more of them into your area, your community, so that will multiply the level of radiation.
Yeah.
Again, the authorities need to get to their senses pretty quickly and act.
Okay, and the other thing that I wanted to be clear about, because we were talking about this at community level, that's one, maybe, is that 2 masks up already?
That's 2
Is that one
yes.
support? Right. How many more would we need in this area to support that big 5G that went up? Because I'm understanding it would need to have more, but I wasn't really clear about that. Can you?
Certain cities have got a project called Smart Cities, which means having sensors and transmission equipment everywhere.
Right.
It's like having a spy on every street corner.
I understand that.
That's called densification, which means to have a very dense concentration of these.
Right.
That's possibly because the new technology they're trying to bring in for 5G is known as millimetre waves, and has got a shorter distance to travel. Therefore, you need more masts in a particular area to provide that, yes?
Yeah, that's fine. I understand that. And then also, what about when you're living in an area that's been, because fairly recently, St. Paul's and this city, it's been built up, as you can see when we came down with housing. Do you think that makes a difference in terms of the thinking of the proposer, which I call telecom or the 3G or whoever? Do you think that makes a difference to how they target areas with these masks?
I think these masks dehumanise areas. You look at the stark greyness of that sort of mask. The technology that mask embodies is totally out of place in a lower level place like St. Paul's, which has got a very human touch. I visited St. Paul's for the first time today, and I can see a strong sense of community in the buildings, the graffiti and other local structures.
Absolutely.
You've got a definite personality in your area. If it was a conservation area, because of that, then the local authority would have a case for not having any masks there.
Right. Thank you for that. What I'm saying in a nutshell is, in lobbying and driving this community to understand the impact of a 5G, to get the council to acknowledge your decision made last year in September 2019 was done outside our knowledge. We are now fully aware of the impact of a 5G mast. We are now asking you to review and to revert and to have that mast take down. What would you be saying to advising me?
There's a number of approaches you can consider. The main two, there's a court case about to be launched by a group called Action Against 5G, which is going to analyse evidence, including actual evidence of harm in certain local communities across the country.
Right.
Secondly, there may be grounds for regarding health problems caused by radiation as a statutory nuisance. Now, I'm not the expert on that, but if people had anything that wasn't a mast and it was causing health problems, I think it would be actionable.
Right. You know, I'm really grateful in my campaign to lobby against having this mast taken down, and listening to what you've explained to me, and I appreciate that you said you're not a total expert, but you've done this in various areas. I'm very convinced, and I will keep up the lobbying to have that mast. It needs to come down. I'm really fearful for this community, for our children, for the environment. It needs to come down.
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Measuring the mast output in volts per metre, which is the established measure for an electrical field, the meter manufacturer have got a figure of 614 millivolts per metre, which is 0.6 volts per metre roughly, as their recommended limit for prolonged exposure. Now that figure is exactly 1% of ICNIRP's limit of 61.4 volts per metre. In 2000, a group of scientists known as the Salzburg Conference came up with a resolution that wanted a lower limit than ICNIRP and felt that would provide some window of safety.